Good evening, or good afternoon, wherever you are, whatever time it is. It's evening time here in Tokyo, Japan. I'm Marc Lowe, here in my apartment, where I've been living for a year in this room. And I want to just really talk about any variety of topics tonight. This is not a music talk per se. Up until now, I've done only music talks. I've been talking about my work, my albums. I talked about David Bowie. I talked about some other artists who had influenced me. But in fact, tonight I really want to talk about a wider range of topics. And I'm doing this also intentionally in English for a wider audience, not just for a Japan-based audience. So firstly, I want to start with a quote that I recently sort of picked up on, I guess you could say, something that really struck me by the late great Oscar Wilde. And he said something to the effect of, and I'm sort of paraphrasing, that art is the sort of ultimate form of individuality, that it is the sort of ultimate expression of a person's individuality. And I think to start with, I want to take as a kind of topic or subtopic for this talk I'll be doing now, the idea of individuality. And what do I mean by individuality, and how do I wish to approach this, and why? And I don't mean this just in the sort of generalized sense of individuality. Again, going back to the quote, it's art and individuality, right? Firstly, I'm teaching a course on David Bowie at university here in Tokyo this semester, to very basically young students who many of them know or knew little to nothing of David Bowie. But the point is that I've been approaching the course from the perspective of David Bowie's sort of individuality. That he had been sort of a person who was very much opposed to, or very much working against the grain, right? Okay, against sort of herd mentality. We talk about this, not following the herd, and that David Bowie did not follow the herd, right? So he sort of carved his own way. David Robert Jones, right? He changed his name to David Bowie, and then he sort of took his own path. Now, certainly, that's not totally true throughout his entire career in every way. There's an overgeneralization, of course. He sometimes veered toward the commercial because one reason or another, and it's obviously more complicated than just this. But individuality, yes? What does this mean? Why is it important to one who either wishes to become an artist, or who is sort of by one's nature, within oneself, an artist? And when I say artist, people get prickly when individuals, it's like if you call yourself an artist, if you're making art, if you're making work, if you're making music, if you're making paintings, if you're making literature, if you're making anything that's original, then you're an artist. It's quite simple. There's nothing egotistical about saying it. You can be a commercial artist if you're doing that for a living, or you can be an artist who makes your work. And if it's in Japanese, sakuhin. Someone who makes sakuhin, someone who makes something, births something from nothing, from one's imagination, one's creativity. That's an artist. Very simple. So Oscar Wilde says that, art is the great sort of indicator of one's individuality, or it's the great sort of tool that one can use to express one's individuality. And indeed, I believe this is the case. And putting David Bowie aside, I don't want to talk at length tonight about David Bowie. It's not a talk about David Bowie. It's not a talk, as I said, specifically even about music. I am going to talk about music as one form of art and as one form of expression and expressing one's individual nature through music. Obviously, that's one thing that I have done and I do, and on this channel, that's sort of the main thing that I'm, I guess you could say, advertising or doing or promoting in terms of both video and some audio things. And but that's actually not. That's not all, right? And again, one can express one's individuality, one's art in various ways, obviously. And all of the forms of expression are, I believe, very much interrelated, interconnected. This is why, by the way, going back to David Bowie for just a moment here, I have been so enamored with him and his career that he's not the typical rock star or rock band leader or whatever who, performs in one or two styles throughout the career and that's it. And the fans kind of like get it and then they kind of just follow along like the Rolling Stones. I don't mean to make them out to be some kind of horrible I'm not I'm not dissing the Rolling Stones per se. They had some great tunes, but the Rolling Stones changed styles a bit, right? But you know what I mean. David Bowie was different album to album. He changed his style, he changed his musical style, he changed his look, and that's why he was so has been so influential both in the worlds of music and also film, right? He was an actor. He acted in films. He did The Elephant Man on Broadway, almost got killed by the man who killed John Lennon, by the way, on the 8th of December. And I guess on the 9th of December he was, playing to an audience with the 3 empty seats in the front row there, which would have been John Lennon, Yoko Ono, and the Mark, I forget his name, who was the murderer who was caught. Anyway. Fashion, art, music. Bowie was also a painter. Bowie was also a critic, an art critic, and so on and so on and so on, right? So this is why I have such a respect for the man, not just because he created the Ziggy Stardust character or the Thin White Duke when he was coked out and a bit, fascistic or whatever, fascist philosophy, right? Hitler was the first rock star, he said, because Hitler could control people and move people to do anything for him. And that's another kind of thing that maybe I might move into that too, like talking about this in a way. I will, because I want to, again, the topic, the greater topic I want to discuss, at least firstly, is individuality. And what does it mean, not only to the artist, but what does it mean, and how does one sort of not only express it, but how does one kind of like deal with it, you see? Because this is not a romantic thing, a romantic topic, that being individual is great. Being individual is something that everyone should strive for. Bullshit. It's not necessarily for everyone, in fact, and not everyone can be such. And not everyone should be or would be happy being such. And in fact, I'd like to suggest, and this is sort of eventually maybe the direction in which this talk is going to head, that one who is indeed very much an individual, individualistic, and follows one's own path, one's own beat of one's own drum. Frank Sinatra, right? My Way, right? I'm going to turn the music in the background down a bit. This is a compilation that I recently released, and I decided to just play it in the background. But anyway, if one becomes this, or is this, by one's nature, and if one sort of follows this path and does not concern oneself with what others want one to do, want one to be, following the herd, to get back to this, right? Which in any culture is something that the majority of people are going to do, right? Because it's the easy way, and because it's the path of least resistance. Is the way, if you want to be popular, you want to have friends, you want to have girlfriend, boyfriend, or perhaps multiple partners, or whatever it is, right? I'm going to also get into this as part of this too, which is power, money, sex, all these things that go around this, right? And what are people after in this life? And what are one's morals? What are one's, not morals, but what are one's sort of fundamental beliefs and values, and goals, individual goals, right? talk about individualism, individuality. The artist, as I think Wilde would have said or was suggesting in this quotation that I mentioned, obviously he was a kind of wild, the name is suitable, a character who followed the beat of his own drum, certainly, like Bowie himself too, right? You could see some parallels, right? Bowie was like, I'm bisexual, and I don't give a fuck about what you think. I'm gonna paint my face and, wear dresses and fuck you, and he did, and he shot up to the top of, his. He became a superstar. But anyway, not everybody does, and not everybody can. But that's not the point, and that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I'm not here to talk about Bowie's fame, or the downside, the dark side of that either, right? The cocaine and the dark stuff that he went through as well. That's not the topic per se. Why, if being an individual, in the real sense of the word, if this could make us happy, in the sense of being popular or having people like us, this kind of thing, right? This is not the goal of the individual, is it? Because if it were, there are much easier ways to do that. An easier way to do that is to conform or to do what people want you to say or do. But I'd like to suggest that the artist, the real artist, the true artists in the world, and the true artists in the world, by the way, I do not define this as the artists who attain some great degree of fame, or artists who attain, who can make millions from their art, either as a musician or as a painter or as a whatever, an author, a writer, whatever it is. It doesn't matter, whatever the art is, an actor. This is not what I'm talking about, although obviously people who are doing this, David Bowie is an example. He was an artist in my definition, but he was also more popular than many artists ever get to be, and some are great artists, maybe even greater in some ways than David Bowie was, perhaps in their own ways, but they maybe didn't have that ability. Now, on the sort of far end of this spectrum, you do have artists who are, I don't want to say like outsider, there's outsider art, right, of course, but I don't want to use that as a sort of defining term, because I don't mean, for example, when we say outsider art, we're usually talking about artists who are people who have kind of like serious mental issues and who follow their own path, but it's so kind of out there that most people can't follow it, right? Like maybe singers who are sort of tone deaf, but at the same time they have some kind of like unique aspect, and so their music is kind of interesting to some. This is not what I'm talking about, okay, right now. But on the far end of the spectrum, apart from the kind of outsider artists in this definition, are the artists who really do push the envelope, and they do it in such a way as to kind of buck the what's acceptable, the system. And like, so let's take David Bowie again as their example. I keep going back to I guess he's just going to keep coming up, isn't he? Because I'm teaching the course on Bowie, and because he's a kind of essential figure in my mind right now, in terms of individuality, art, and so on. But actually, I'd like to take him as an example to give the example of how he is not so radical, actually, and why he was able to attain popularity, whereas some of the really radical artists who push the envelope even more do not, cannot, and never will, and also are ultimately going to be more isolated, less loved, and some of them go insane, some of them kill themselves. It's not hard to imagine why, is it? Right? But David Bowie, okay? Let's think about David Bowie's career. His music, David Bowie's music, at its most experimental, is still rather accessible, is it not? And what's the most experimental David Bowie album? What's the most experimental David Bowie music? Let's say first the things that have been officially released, and then I'm going to mention one work that wasn't or hasn't been officially released, that maybe is the prime example of his kind of far out experimental work that wasn't released by the label because it was too far out. They thought it wouldn't sell, right? But I guess most people would agree, perhaps, that the most experimental albums are like the parts that form the Berlin so-called trilogy. Maybe the first two parts, right? Lowe and Heroes, which Lowe has recorded France and Berlin, and then Heroes, really the Berlin album, right? And then Lodger, of course, was later. It's not really even from Berlin, but just to have Brian Eno there. But so Lowe, the B-side, right? And the A-side has some short pop songs. They're kind of weird. They kind of have weird lyrics and weird sound, but you know, and synths and whatever. So that was weird at the time, right? He was doing glam rock, and then he was doing soul music, and then suddenly he's doing this. And then the B-side is what? Instrumentals like Warsawa, right? And Subterraneans, and then some shorter ones. So, you know, it's kind of ambient, right? It has the Brian Eno touch on it, and Bowie playing synths, and there's, on Heroes, there's the koto, the Japanese koto, and this kind of thing. So it's right, okay, it's kind of experimental, it's kind of avant-garde, it's kind of out there, right? But you put that next to, what? You put that even next to Scott Walker's later work, right? And Scott Walker and David Bowie were friends, right? And Scott Walker had been kind of like part of like the Walker brothers. They were like totally, you know, pop stars, if you will, like the Beatles in the early 60s or something, mid-60s, early 60s, whatever, with the, you know, the Screaming Girl fans, which Scott Walker hated, obviously, and he drifted further and further from that throughout his career until the latter albums are just almost completely like nightmare soundtracks. It's like the soundtrack to somebody's nightmare, right? With people punching slabs of meat as drums, and this kind of, you know, extreme sort of, he sings in an operatic voice, and the music is at times gut-wrenchingly dark and abstract and atonal, and sometimes noisy, sometimes quiet, and suddenly out of nowhere there are these bursts of noise and things. But you compare this to Lowe, and Lowe is like a very accessible album. What else from Bowie? Okay, the album was a sort of maligned by critics and fans alike, that I thought was like basically his best ever, or certainly the best up until that time, or the best, they said the best since Scary Monsters, but actually the best since maybe Lowe. I love Scary Monsters too, by the way, but was one Outside, which again had Brian Eno, this time producing, not Visconti. And Outside, like going from Outside to the Outside, the unreleased sessions, which have been released, you can find them on YouTube. There's the Leon, I think usually called the Leon sessions, and they have these long, like 20-minute blocks of improvisations, and within those improvisations you can hear bits of things that became songs on the Outside album, and segs, as they're called, on the Outside album, okay, featuring this kind of characters that Bowie plays, putting effectors on his voice, so he sounds like a girl, Baby Grace Blue, and he sounds like an old man, Algeria Touchrigan, etc. Okay, it's pretty experimental, it's pretty avant-garde. It's the sessions themselves that were unreleased are basically, at times, large parts of them are obviously improvisational, and I think Bowie is improvising the vocals, and I think the musicians are improvising things. They used apparently these what are they called? Not tarot cards, but this kind of game that I don't remember what it's called now. And someone's going to be watching the video and say, "Oh, it's called this, the something strategies, right?" Cards that Eno was using to you would give a band member in the studio a card and assign them a role, like you're this guy out in the jungle, so play the drums that way, or you're this guy, you're this whatever character, and this is how you feel right now, and then play the piano that way Mike Garson would play. Whatever. Okay. Oblique strategies, I think it's called. Anyway, doesn't matter. So it's experimental, yes, but these sessions were never officially released for the reason that they were too experimental. And they weren't pop, they weren't rock, they weren't anything. But again, You can compare those to some of what Frank Zappa did, or what John Zorn did, or what I don't know. There are a million artists that have been kind of more experimental, right? And most of them, many of them, are just almost completely unknown, right? Because they're so off on that tangent. I mean, even Swans, the New York band Swans, soundtracks for the blind, where you have like Coil, right? One of my favorites. Experimental, kind of electronic music. Anyway, these guys, not gonna be, let's put David Bowie and Brian Eno aside. Let's talk about Coil. I told you, it's not gonna be a talk. I'm telling you, the viewers, the listeners, not just about music, right? But I guess this is the indoor that I want to start with, and then go kind of bring it back to sort of, other topics around individuality, and eventually, art, and also eventually isolation, loneliness, depression, possibly madness, and psychology, philosophy, literature. I have many things I'd like to discuss, actually, and I'm not sure how this talk is going to turn out, how I will end up editing this even, because I'm approaching this from an improvisatory angle, actually. But if you'd like to stick with me, so I mentioned Coil, right? I rather recently contributed to a Coil tribute album, and I put a track which was recorded years ago. It was the first track I ever recorded using the keyboard in Logic, after I just bought the mini USB Korg keyboard, and I was actually it was like 3 a.m. or something, I think, and I was completely drunk on shochu, Japanese shochu, which is a kind of just, it's like osake, but it's a little bit different. And came home, and I just sat down with the headphones, and I just improvised this thing, and including the vocals. And afterwards, I thought, it sounds like Coil, and so I dedicated it to Coil. And over the years, I remixed it, rearranged it many times, and one version of that, an instrumental version, went on that. Coil were also, right, very much improvisational, masters of this kind of, what do you want to call it? It's not psychedelic, it's not, it can be trippy, but it's certainly not hippie trippy. It's hallucinatory sometimes, it's a dreamlike sometimes, it's sometimes dark, it's usually dark, sometimes beautiful, sometimes there's a John Balance will sing, sometimes he sings in a sweeter voice, sometimes he sings in a kind of screaming voice. Madness certainly is a theme that I get from Coil's music, whether it has lyrics, vocals, or not, whether it has Balance singing or another guest, or sometimes female vocalists that they had employed. And John Balance, he was alcoholic, and he died in a rather destructive manner. And he fell, I guess, down the staircase or over the rail of the staircase. I'm not sure exactly, but he must have broken his neck or something. He died this way. And it's very interesting, because he sang about this kind of madness, of course, and death a lot. And in one of the early albums, Coil did a song called "The Anal Staircase." I don't think I've ever read this anywhere, heard this anywhere, but when he died and I heard that he fell down the stairs or tripped went over the rail, I thought of the anal staircase. I mean, just as it's a metaphor, right? That he died this way. And his partner, he was gay, and his partner, off and on, I guess, but they were partners in Coil, as well as apparently lovers at some point, off and on. Peter Christopherson, sometimes nicknamed Sleazy, I actually saw him live after John Balance had died. I'd never seen Coil live. They were performing only in the UK at the time, and never been to the UK. I was either in America or I was in Japan, and I saw him live in America as part of show that included some of his friends, DVOA, I think, Dead Voices on Air, Mark Spivey, and these people. And it was a really odd show because he had some video running, and it was actually quite disturbing to me because he was showing them like these young Thai boys. Apparently he was sort of into this, yes, and then the show was almost not about music, I thought. Most of it was pre-programmed, and he actually, my recollection anyway, or the way that it stuck in my memory, is he wasn't doing much on stage. He was just pressing a few buttons or whatever and running the video and the backing tracks, right? I sometimes use backing tracks when I perform live in certain styles, and I always perform, I sing live and I perform live either keyboard or guitar or something on top of those things. But it just was like video and backing tracks, and he seemed not to be doing much, and he seemed extremely depressed and down. And I just remember, what I remember most about that show is not the music, although I do remember some of the images of these Thai boys that was, to me, a bit disturbing because it just made me uncomfortable, to be honest. But that's also my judgmental mind, right? So I don't know, I'm not judging him personally what he was doing, but what I recall most was just the sadness of Christofferson, the loneliness, the sadness that he was talking to the audience as it was like it was a therapy session. And he was addressing us, and he was saying, man, you have no idea what I'm going through. You have no idea how hard my life is right now. Without John, you have no idea. And it was, if it had been like, can you imagine like David Bowie, for instance, or Prince, or these are deceased artists now, or I don't know, Lady Gaga, or some major artist performing at, like, say, a stadium or something, like Bowie in the 80s was a stadium, or even a large venue, and just in the middle of the show, just breaking down and confessing and almost crying. This is not a short speech. This is like a very long speech. This is way more radical in a way than what David Bowie did at Wembley when he knelt down and said the Lord's Prayer, right? Everyone made a big deal about this, but like, Christofferson was pouring out his guts, his soul, to a bunch of strangers who paid to see him perform, and he really, as far as I was concerned, he barely even performed. He just sort of, like I said, ran the tape, and it seemed like he was there to just like tell us how bad things were, and to kind of, it was like his a therapy session in front of everyone. And I don't remember how long thereafter, but some months after, or maybe it was a year after, he was gone too. He died. And so these guys, for example, right? Just another example. I was talking about David Bowie before. It's kind of more of a major artist. We had Scott Walker too. Scott Walker he outlived David Bowie, but Scott Walker also, pulled a hat down over his face. He wasn't a very social man, and he was not. He's a perfectionist. He was shy around people. He's not popular with people. I don't think he had tons of friends surrounding him. If he had friends, it was people who respected him as a musician or as an artist, right? Or people who were like-minded in some way. And that was what it was. It wasn't that he was, popular in that sense, right? I keep doing this. I have this habit of doing the quotations with my fingers. So, and quite frankly, I don't give a shit about an artist's popularity, per se. What strikes me or doesn't strike me is what's being expressed in the artist's music, painting, writing, and so to get back to this, Oscar Wilde, individuality, right? Art is the expression of individualism, or rather individualism can be well expressed through art. Now, I've already kind of touched on this. Depression, madness, or if not madness, if not total insanity, this kind of like, artists tend to be people who are teetering in some way near the edge of something, right? That they are not completely comfortable in society, in the world at large. And why is this? Let's explore this. I mean, this isn't obviously a brand new topic for discussion, right? Discussed for centuries. There are lots of books written about it. Lots of people talk about this. But I'm going to give this from my perspective right now. My perspective, and also I'd like to discuss this kind of in terms of what I've experienced and learned for myself over the years, and particularly this last year. Maybe you could say, although over the years really it's a sort of accumulation of experience, isn't it? As everything is. And no, I'm not suggesting that I'm insane or mad or teetering, but I am also going to say that I'm driven to make music, to make art, to make stuff, including writing. I wrote fiction for years, and I still like to write. Reading philosophy and reading literature and discussing, right, which I do. My job is to teach now, and I teach everything from American literature, Japanese literature, current events, and I pull in, obviously philosophy, psychology, and all these things that interest me. David Bowie, right? And David Bowie, we're talking about Nietzsche, right? And we're talking about religion and spirituality, or religion versus spirituality. These are undergraduates, young kids, but these are important topics, right? And so to be an individual, what's at stake? As one of my teachers of Nabokov, I took a seminar on Nabokov when I was in graduate school at Brown. I was studying creative writing, and I took some outside classes in other departments. And the one that was maybe the one that I remember the most, I did 1001 Nights, which was cool, but the one that I really loved the best was this course on Nabokov. And he was a Russian. He was in the Russian department, but he was teaching in English, obviously, so I was able to take the course. And he used to always say, what is at stake in this story? What is at stake here? So what's at stake when one doesn't decide to be necessarily, although one does make a choice, maybe everything in life is a choice to some extent, but what's at stake to become an individual with a capital I, to become an artist with a capital A? And I don't mean that as this kind of thing, but I mean like to just fully embrace that and not consider for even a single moment what other people are going to think of what you've created, whether it's going to sell or be popular or make you even despised, and hated by some people because you're somehow pushing a button that they, it's not like you're necessarily doing that intentionally to piss off the person or the group of people who think a particular way, although maybe if it's for example, a political statement, like I did, for example, a song called Flags of Rage, which was my anger at Trump at the time. This was before Corona. That song actually maybe got more views and listens than some of my other songs because it wasn't about my personal shit expressed in a way that people could not relate to, right? But that's also my art, so fuck you, right? That's what I want to say, and that's fine. And that's, again, not thinking about what other people think or caring about that. And that's important. In fact, that's what's at stake for an artist and for an individual, but not just an artist. In other words, not just a person who's creating music, painting, whatever. That's very, very, very much important, essential, but even for someone who decides to live their life outside the box, outside what society dictates. What's at stake is this. You live your life the way you want to live it. You do not worry about what people are going to think or what they're going to say. But let's get back to this. What is at stake then in the sense of why is this so difficult? Why doesn't everyone just do this, right? And why shouldn't everyone? Why can't everyone? And why shouldn't one even everyone do this? Because I can't give a definitive answer because I'm not God. I'm not the expert on this. I don't know what it is for everyone, each individual, his or her, a way of thinking is going to, and personality and all those things are involved in this, right? But for those of you who know what I'm talking about, without me saying it, you're probably thinking it, which is to say that it's lonely And it's, if you do things that are radical, because they are, when I say radical, I just mean that they're outside the box, or they rub up against the majority's sort of dictates, or what they want you to do, or what they think that you should do, or what they themselves do and believe is the right way to be or do, or, marry, have kids, and then work a 9-to-5 job and get your pension plan, and you can do all sorts of bad shit to people, and you can cheat and you can lie, but just be really clever about it, and don't show a good poker face, wear a good mask, right, and then it's okay, kind of thing. And this doesn't work for everyone, and some people can't do it even if they wanted to, and some people wouldn't want to, but they can't. But getting back to this, so okay, you become an individual. You don't do the 9-to-5 thing. You don't have the family thing where you have it and it breaks apart, or you break it apart because it's not working for you. You can't withstand the pressure of that situation for whatever reason. And so you break away from that. You break away from the herd mentality, okay? But perhaps you're not cheating and lying and doing the bad shit, but at the same time, you're not able either to do a poker face. You're not able to don the mask, but you are an individual and you're not doing what you're supposed to do, yeah? And you're this radical figure, like Oscar Wilde. More than David Bowie, frankly. David Bowie was radical, but only to an extent. And even the book I'm using talks about this, that he had a very conservative side, right? Actually, he used to wear a cross on a chain and write the Lord's Prayer. That's fine. I'm not talking just about religion here, whether he was religious Christian or not, whether he was Buddhist or not, blah, blah, blah. And I want to talk about philosophy and Buddhism a bit too, a little bit later, but and the concept of impermanence, emptiness, and all that. But maybe I won't talk about it. We'll see in this talk. But the point is that if you don't fit in, if you can't fit in, maybe you don't want to, or maybe you just can't, and maybe you just have to be you, and maybe that's why you just have to be, you're just impelled to make your art, and you just don't, you don't think about what people are going to want to see or listen to or read, or whatever it is. And you just do it. And you're true to yourself. What is at stake? What is the risk of this? Well, people who tend to be like this anyway tend to be sensitive, very sensitive, tend to be not only thinkers but overthinkers, right? Maybe they have insomnia. Maybe they drink too much. Although lots of people drink too much, just they handle their liquor different ways, and they can get drunk and stupid and maybe just have fun and it's all cool and it's all okay. But it's a type that I'm describing. Maybe the drinking goes in a bad direction for them and makes them more depressed, or makes them turn inward more and separate from people more, rather than being sort of exceedingly active or extroverted. Extroversion, introversion, this is another thing. I mean, someone who is an artist, I mean, there's always an introverted aspect to this, right? Because you have to go inside to dig up the stuff. Like Murakami Haruki once said, it's like digging the well, or going down deep into the well, this dark place in yourself. And it's scary and it's dark and it's not fun to be in there, but like it's the essential thing, that the artist needs to do or is impelled to do. And then from that, you draw forth the water, I guess, from the well, which is the idea that becomes the art that you create, right? You go down into the well and you come back with this water. And not everybody's going to want to drink that water. To use that metaphor, I don't know if this metaphor works, because the water would have to be clean for people to want to drink it. Maybe it's not clean. I don't know, maybe it's filled with some kind of essential minerals that you need. Or maybe it's, you need to take the water out of the well and just get rid of it, like in Japanese, hakidasu, like get it out. Spit the poison out of the blood, right? Or get the water out of the well, the dirty water out of the well. Going back to John Balance of Coil, there's too much blood in my alcohol, he sang once, right? He had alcohol problems. Very common amongst artists, right? And amongst sensitive people. Forget the drugs that many of them do. Bowie too, he did cocaine, right? But, Hemingway and many of these writers were alcoholics, right? And because we're sensitive individuals, aren't we? We're sensitive people, and we need to somehow, I don't know. Alcohol is a very dangerous drug, or it can be, and it can really mess things up if you don't know how to handle it. But anyway, I've certainly had my share of problems with drinking too much, and then saying things that I later regretted, that kind of thing, right? But anyway, what's at stake is everything. It's your life. And if you are an artist, that is, you create stuff because you have no other choice but to create it, and you're not doing it for commercial reasons. Again, somebody like David Bowie could do that also as his living because he had the talent for this. He was able to navigate that world. He was maybe a combination of introvert and extrovert, right? He seems very extroverted, but actually he was also very bookish, and right toward the end of his life, the last 10 years he spent at home, more than 10 years until he died, right? He after the reality tour, and he had the heart problem, he just spent time at home with his wife and kid, reading books and painting and stuff, apparently, right? And he was like in New York, putting the sunglasses on and trying to not be recognized because he's like, I'm done with this, right? And but when at the height of Ziggy Stardust, 1972, 73, this kind of thing, right? That's when he's actually 73, 74 started doing cocaine because it became too much for him, because maybe the introvert in him got tired of all the BS and having to deal with all these people and please everyone, and just excess. And the drugs were there, and the sex was there, and the money was there, right? We know that this can corrupt a person, even a good person. I'm not saying Bowie was good or not good, but he was a blend of that. But we all are, right? We all have a dark side. We all have a shadow side, right? Talk about psychology and Jung and the shadow side, right? Artists are the ones, I guess you could say, who are not afraid to grapple with the shadow side, right? With the dark side. Or like Murakami says, to go down into the well and withdraw that water, whether it's clean or dirty, whatever it is, to use that metaphor. And they have no choice but to do this. And it's not, maybe people are going to be jealous or hate them, or just, even not jealousy, even just like, what the fuck is your problem? You're too sensitive, or you don't play by the rules, or you sit in your room all day, you don't come out and hang out with us anymore, or can't keep a relationship going because it just doesn't work out, but let's look at the bright side, if you will, of what this also can produce, or the positive benefits of this thing, which is going back. Now I said, right, individuality, art, okay, and then being alone. And what I mean by being alone, what I mean is, but like voluntarily putting oneself in a situation where one is not just doing what everyone else does all the time, hanging out with people, being social, for the sake of being social. I had read this summer, for 2 straight months, I was in Jishuku, I was in self-imposed, I a quarantine. I wasn't sick, but during COVID, we had 5,000 a day this summer with the Olympics last summer, waiting on the vaccine. And so I decided, okay, great, I'm not going to get on the trains. I'm not going to take any risk, and I'm just not going to be near anyone. I'm just going to make art, take long walks. It's hard. I was working on myself. I'm still working on myself. Polish, right? This is what I want to talk about. Now I'm going to talk about the benefit of the Stoic, if you will, okay? Being a kind of Stoicism, or a kind of voluntary self-isolation. In my case, it was combined with the Corona thing, but that was just, the thing that sort of started me off on that. And when I was younger, I had practiced Zen meditation, Zazen, Buddhism, even a bit of koan study, Qigong. So I've kind of had an interest in all these things. I actually studied Buddhism in graduate school, something I've never talked about publicly here. In addition to literature, in addition to writing, creative writing, I also studied Buddhism academically, and Taoism academically, and practiced those things. And so doing this summer, I was not meditating daily, sitting like a monk, like with my hands like this, with my legs crossed, or Qigong. Actually, I've more recently started doing it again a bit as a kind of form of exercise, like yoga would be, to stretch and to breathe. And I had some pain in my jaw that wouldn't go away, and now with chiropractic and Qigong, it's gone away, basically. So you see, this is the body saying something's wrong. Now, getting into the benefits of this. So what's the benefit of not being social all the time, of being a bit stoic? The minus is that, not everyone loves you, you're not having fun all the time, you're not maybe getting laid at all, or having these kinds of meetings, right? Which, by the way, has its dark side too, for sure. It's not only positive to that, right? And I don't need to sort of go into the details of this. Relationships, or even this kind of a physical only kind of thing too, has its risk and its danger, does it not? But anyway, the other part of this is that you polish yourself up, right? When you're alone, whether or not you're meditating, like sitting and doing this kind of deep breathing exercise, or koan study, or whatever it is. In Zen it's shikantaza, just sitting, or right, shinkokyu in Japanese, right, the deep breathing kind of thing. But in addition to the sort of like health benefits, right, let's say the body, mentally, it's not easy to be alone all the time, is it? We are social creatures, we need interaction. And if we have no interaction, we start getting weird. We start talking to ourselves, and then that thing that I've said before about the artist who is sort of closer to the edge, and the sort of risk of being not insane, but sort of going too far out and losing it, and depression, suicide, alcoholism, all these things, right? The risk is increased, particularly with the type who is internal and overthinking and oversensitive in some ways. Maybe paranoia could start happening. These other things which are not good. But I said, let's talk about the benefits, yes? So let me talk about the benefits. So yes, the physical benefit, obviously, if you're meditating and so on, it's good for your health. Like I got rid of my jaw pain, okay? Also with the chiropractic, which is actually though getting help from the outside. So this is important too. Balance, yes? Balance. This is the point. You go too far the stoic side, or you go too far on the sort of, hey man, I'm just gonna party and have fun, and that side, then it's not balanced, right? So the middle path, right? The Buddha chose the middle path, not the path of the complete stoic, or the complete mendicant, starved himself and realized, I'm gonna die, and that wasn't enlightenment for him. He was enlightened by realizing the middle way, right? Which is just saying balance. You just take it that way, right? I'm not going to tell the story of the Buddha, but so benefits, yeah, you're alone, you can make you have a lot of time, well, to think, which can be good or bad if you're overthinking it, but to make art, whatever kind of art, In my case, yeah, music, video too. I did a lot of video this past summer, not just these talk videos, obviously, which is just me sitting here chatting with a camera, right? It's very easy to do, but also, on my walks, filming things and self-filming even myself, like at times, right? To kind of mix it up and not just have a sort of video of like the neighborhood or the shrine or, the cockroach crawling into the hole during my chaos video, which I had too, but, some brief shots of me and what I looked like and the expression on my face that the iPhone captured, which was just me at that time, which was how I was feeling being alone for eventually 2 months and not seeing a single soul other than the person at the convenience store or the supermarket wearing masks, right? Literally, and I took walks just every day. And my friends, what friends I still had, were like, man, chill out, have fun, it's Corona, but at that time, right before the vaccinations, right now, the numbers are very low. All 76% vaccinated in Japan, but now we have Omicron, who knows? But anyway, I'm not worried about it right now. But you need balance, and I did need more balance. But I also completed my tetralogy in the summer. I actually did 2 albums from the tetralogy. Hope was completed early in the year and released in February, and then late February on my birthday I put it on Bandcamp. I advertised it and tried to do something like delay it and make a sort of campaign using Facebook and other social media. Nobody bought it. I was very disappointed, and I realized, I just really suck at PR, and I don't care anymore because I'm not a commercial artist. I'm not making it to sell it for money, and it doesn't mean no one listened to it. People have listened to it. People have commented on it. The videos have gotten hits too. We did Akiko, my friend Honda Akiko and I did Hope, the video together, and then I later remixed that and did my own version too, and these things. So whatever, blah blah blah. Anyway, so I finished the tetralogy though. That in the spring I did The Sun Is Coming, and then there was The Answer Is Inside, and I talked about these in another talk. This talk is not about the tetralogy, but I just happen to have this here. I've got a bunch of stuff here, and this is the moment, So this is the last part that I finished in the summer. Actually, the cover was a self-shot, face shot that actually it's in the video for Chaos and in the video for There Is a Light Again, which is the remixed version I did for the album this year, which was a song from last year's Untitled album. I'm not going to talk about that whole thing, but that does really sort of tie in with this being alone, and certainly ties in with the art, obviously making art, but in depression, because I certainly was not a happy camper last year and into this year, and I guess you could say I'm sort of recovering from this a bit, and one way that I do recover is by doing this stuff, not by drinking beer or alcohol. That doesn't help, okay? Because that would be right. That quickly leads to a very serious, dangerous alcoholic a condition, which is becomes a drug, and it's danger. But the music and the video and the cover art, the photography too, like all the stuff that goes around making my music, is the way that I deal with this, the things. This is just a karaage. This was from, I went to visit my daughter finally in September, and we went to the Suizokkan, the aquarium, and I took the jellyfish. Oops. So that's what that was. This one I took myself in the studio, and then, effectorized it, right? I just happen to have these here. And there I go, randomly pulling stuff out and showing. This is the Boxman Hako Toko by Abe Kobo. It's one of my favorite books by Abe Kobo. Is a brilliant author. I want to do a talk on him in Japanese sometime. And it's one reason I bought this Bunkobon, this version in Japanese. I'm going to reread this for the first time in a long time in Japanese, in the original, and maybe do a talk in Japanese on Hako Toko Abe Kobo. I have a song called Boxman on this channel that's based on this. The lyrics are based on it, although they're sung in English. Hako Toko is about a man who prefers living inside of a box, and he puts 2 holes in so he can see out. And there's all kinds of metaphors around this, like, homeless people living in boxes. They can see you, or they look at you, but people ignore them. They don't see them, right? So it's like you're behind the box. No one can see you. You can see out, but no one can see in. So you're protecting yourself while also being a voyeur, an observer of the world. But you can't participate in the world if you do this, can you? And no one can get in. You don't let anyone in. And this is, I think, a very good metaphor for this kind of loner artist type, right? Talk about this stoicism, staying inside. And by the way, yes, I have this aspect myself to my personality, perhaps. Perhaps I don't let people in as much as I used to either, because you let people in too much and you get burnt enough times and you decide to shut them out. And I don't have to wear a box to do this. This is the metaphor, but I can stay in this room and make music and or just listen to music and chill out with a beer or write or grade papers for school, whatever it is. And then I can also go to events from time to time and see people and drink and be merry and maybe even have a date once in a while. But why are we alive? Why are you alive? Why am I alive? We all have our own reasons for subsisting in the world. Of course, we're here, we're breathing, we have this body, and we have our needs: food, roof over the head, we need some money, pay the rent, and get our essentials. But on top of the essentials are the emotional needs, the physical needs, right, of humans. The need to make art, it doesn't exist in everyone. Not everyone makes art. Not everyone can. Not everyone feels the need to. Some people want to, but say they can't because they have some mental block or something. That, frankly, I've never understood, because I just have never had that. Without art, I would literally just be miserable. So miserable. Like even I've been miserable before, but art has pulled me out of that. And without art would certainly be a very boring, very dull, very miserable life. When I say art, of course, I'm talking about music, but of course, I'm not only talking about music. I'm talking about literature and painting and everything around it. I said literature, film, photography, you name it. I can live without sports. Okay, I don't care about football or baseball or soccer or any of this. I just don't care about it. I don't want to watch it. I don't need to do it. It doesn't interest me. If you like it, great, cool. You want to go to the sports bar and cheer on your favorite team, that's cool. I don't get it. And I don't want to play sports. I don't like playing sports. I do need to exercise because I have a body. As you can see, I'm not overweight, even though I drink beer sometimes, because I watch the things that I eat, and I exercise, and sometimes meditate or do qigong. And but art is, to me, I said this to someone the other day, it's like the air I breathe, and without it I don't know what I'd do, And so again, that has very little, actually nothing to do with whether people accept it, whether people like it, don't like it, whether they buy it, don't buy it. It's not commerce. It's not commercial. I don't give a fuck anymore. I did for many years, but I kind of don't. I kind of stopped caring about it because I realized that it doesn't matter, actually. Essentially, it doesn't. I'm not trying to, I've given up trying to do this as make a living. In fact, when I was sort of trying that, it was like the round peg in a square hole, and I realized that, like, you want to do it for money, then you're going to be limited by, people are going to tell you, do this, and if you don't do this, you're not going to get any further, and people are going to get pissed off at you and give you a hard time, and it's just going to suck, and you're not going to be able to do what you want to do. You're not going to be able to make the work that you need to make. That the reason you're doing it is for this, right? Heart yourself. it's about ego, just don't do it. You can be proud of your work. There's nothing wrong with that. You can call yourself an artist. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're doing it for money, if you're doing it to be accepted or something, it's a big mistake. Really big mistake. It's just not going to work out. What else do I want to talk about? I've got this pile of books in front of me. I haven't sort of dug into it. Again, I'm not sure how I'm going to edit this yet. And I'm playing in the background. This is Ghost right now, this track. And I was going to overlay this later when I edited it, but I want to listen to the music as I'm talking. I'm always listening to music. This is my own music. Obviously, I can't play things I've been listening to recently, like Lorne or IMX or Saltillo, another artist called Saltillo. I can't play that because then YouTube's going to flag my video for a copyright. This is another thing, to talk about copyright and how stupid it is, right? You want to be commercial, the label owns the music and then no one else can use it, right? You have to pay, even after the artist does. David Bowie's gone, but I have to pay every time I cover a song, even if I do it in a completely new style. Even if I change the lyrics and change the arrangement completely, I still have to pay the label, right? It's business, right? So I'm not going to complain about this here. I just did, but that's commerce. Right? So anyway, this is my music in the background, and this compilation, it's a compilation of work from previous years that kind of noise music or music with noise elements that I was interested in. A lot of it's very dark, and there are a couple pieces on here. There's some instrumentals. Ghost is basically instrumental. Well, it looks as though you've seen a ghost. Kind of a spoken word, high tone. But otherwise, there's a couple of like piano pieces and quiet pieces on here, but mainly it's a kind of dark album, dark noise, dark ambient instrumentals, etc. Anyway, this I just released on Bandcamp. So here you go. I'm just talking about all kinds of things, right? I'm talking about my music. I'm talking about David Bowie. I talked a bit about what? Not just individuality, not just art and music and depression and the need for sex, power, and money. Isn't that what makes the world go round? Isn't that why people are sort of striving so hard to do this or that? Why do friends become not friends? Why do relationships fall apart? Why is it that someone you love becomes someone you hate? Why is it that you become jealous of your best friend because he slept with your girlfriend? Oh, you would, right? You have a falling out over some stupid argument about something insignificant with someone you've been friends with for 10 years and then you can't repair it. This kind of thing, right? So it's this thing, right? It's pride, jealousy, I've said, right? Or, right? What is it that we're all trying to obtain? What is the goal of this life? I don't know. I mean, I don't have a clue, and I'm not purporting to. But I said I wanted to talk about Buddhism, and in fact, I will talk about it a little bit, right? You take this from a Buddhist perspective, and also the Stoic, I mentioned Stoicism, Buddhism, Stoicism, Taoism, these are all kind of related. Eisenganger, I think there's a guy publishing on YouTube as Lone Wolf in German. I may have gotten that wrong, I'm not checking it, but he has some really nice videos and books too that I read over the summer when I was doing my jishuku, my self-quarantine or whatever you want to call it, stay at home alone. And he, on his site, although Stoicism is kind of the main thing, he also he discusses Buddhism and he discusses Taoism because they're all kind of related. And I studied, as I mentioned, pretty seriously Buddhism, maybe more than anything, and also some Taoism because of my interest in Qigong and ancient Chinese philosophy and thought. Yeah, we want to, you want to win the race. You want to get the girl, or for some people, it's never happy with just one, right? Some women are never happy with just one man either. But whatever, or you want to get, the promotion or the job or the bonus, and all that. Sex and money. I've been thinking about this. I've been reading a lot of quotations too from various places. I started with the Oscar Wilde quote for this reason. And there's a quote that said, everything is about sex except sex. Sex is about power. And I thought, no, that's not right. I would rephrase it as everything is about power, including and or especially sex. Right? The sex is representative of power, right? Represents power. Money represents power, right? All these things represent power. And so really, what is the essential thing that humans want? They want power. And to get power, you can get sex, you can get money, you can get adoration from your peers. What if you just say, no, just turn your back on all that stuff and you say, that stuff is not what's going to make me happy in the core of my being. And partly because I'm going to die one day, I'm going to be sick, I'm going to die. I'm going to be here forever. What do I want to do with myself? In my case, I want to make a lot of art, which I've been doing for years. And people actually do get sometimes really nippy about it because, you make more than you should be making. How can you make that much in such a short time? The quality mustn't be there, but then they hear it and the quality is there and they go, oh, well, blah, 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 right? So, whatever. I don't care about this, what I'm saying, and it's not the point. The point is here, what is the goal of our life? Your life, my life, any of our lives. We all have to decide this for ourselves individually. Okay, so power by default. We all want to have love. We all want to be liked or loved. We want to have romance. We want to have sex. We want to have money and power, maybe you could say. Good job, good whatever, right? And it's different. It differs person to person, of course, in the way that we do this and our own individual, right, approaches and personalities and ways of doing. But Buddhism, to get back to this, says, well, yeah, okay, sure, but everything you have to realize, or maybe should realize, as the Buddha did, basically, and he's not a god, and he's not a prophet, and he's not a manifesto writer, and he's not like a priest or anything. He was just a man who realized some stuff and taught people what he had learned, and then told them to find it for themselves. Right? Jiriki in Japanese is self-power movement. You do it yourself. That nobody can do it for you. And in fact, nobody can do it for you. Nobody can make you realize anything that you don't realize for yourself. People can give you hints, they can give you advice. Sometimes the advice is good, sometimes it's really not good. Whether it's good or not depends too on the timing and the individual. When people give advice and they say, take my advice, I know what I'm talking about, and you don't take it and then they get angry at you. What's that? That's their problem, not yours, right? So the Buddha said, basically, you can realize for yourself that we do not exist as, well, what is an individual, right? I'm talking about individuality from the beginning of this talk. It's a very interesting sort of conundrum here, because individuality is, right, not following the herd and so on, right? Being oneself. But at the same time, in Buddhism, it's also you could say that through jiriki, through self-power, we can realize ourselves, and that at the core, however individualistic we are, however we have our strong traits and our likes and dislikes and all the things that make us up, ourselves and our principles and the way that we act and the things we accept and the things we refuse. Within that, at the core, we're empty. And what does that mean? Empty doesn't mean this, a romantic notion of, oh, I'm so empty inside, I'm hurting because you left me and you whatever. Not this romantic kind of emptiness, and not the nihilistic kind of emptiness, there's nothing and so nothing matters. And Aleister Crowley, we can just do thy will, do what you want to do. It's a bit different from even Nietzsche's idea, like a Superman, right? There's a kind of ego in that too. Bowie sort of followed that path in the 80s, right? The Superman, right? This kind of thing. It's not this either. Empty in the sense that, who are we? What's at our core? So you have a face, a body, looks a certain way. You have a name. You have an identity that goes with that. Your family, your background, the color of your skin, nationality, all these things, right? Your job, your career, your likes and dislikes, right? That define your personality. But at the core of that, what really is left at the end of the day? In other words, if if it's impossible to say I am the way I look, right? Because that can be changed. Or I am my name. You could also change your name. Actors do this all the time. David Bowie, he wasn't David Bowie, he was David Robert Jones, but he wasn't David Robert Jones either when he was David Bowie, right? And etc. I'm my name. No. I'm my face, my body. No. I'm my likes, my dislikes. No, you're not just that, right? I'm my personality. Yeah, well, okay, but that changes too, doesn't it? And your moods, your tempers, some of that's due to physical things, hormonal balance, for example, right? Where you had a good day or a bad day. You're none of these things. So what are you? And monks in Zen temples or whatever, they meditate on this. Sometimes there's a koan, this case thing. Show me your face before your mother and father were born. What does it look like? Well, you can't, literally, logically do this. Go back and meditate on this. And you come and you go like this, and the roshi, the priest or whatever, in the temple, this is a kind of a semi-organized religion, you could say, but still, it's not really religion, but it's a kind of system of helping the monks to realize, right? So, no, boom, stupid, go back, this is the Rinzai Zen. Soto Zen, they just sit, they don't do the koan work. But any way you approach it, the idea is to realize nothing, what are we? Who are we? What are we? Part of this universe, right? Part of, it's not a cliche to say that we're all interconnected, right? Like with Corona, we talk about this, right? Internationally, or global warming, right? These are the hot topics now, right? Corona and global warming, right? We all have to pull together as all of us on the earth, right? To figure this stuff out and to stop it and to make it better for all of us, because we share the earth, and Corona is a pandemic. It's everywhere, right? It came out of China, came out of Wuhan. Now we have coming out of South Africa, we have Omicron. If we don't do something about this, then it's going to spread across the globe again. We're going to have the same problems we had last year or last summer or whatever. And some places, Russia and other places, right now very bad anyway with Corona. I didn't read today Russia or whatever, but the UK and whatever. So, okay. So, why am I talking about Buddhism? Why am I talking about this? We can be individuals, but at the same time we have to realize that in the Buddhist way of thinking, Taoism, somewhat similar, I'm not going to go into that, but, is that at the core we're all empty. And so if we're all empty at the core, money, power, and sex even, it may feel good temporarily, right? And it does. It's nice. Money's nice. Feeling powerful, feeling loved, feeling wanted, feeling pride or whatever. Feels good temporarily, and then it's temporary, and then we feel unsatisfied again because we cling to that thing that we want, that we can't have constantly. This is Buddhism, right? Clinging to desire creates suffering, and the cessation of suffering is through what the Buddha called the Eightfold Path, which is a way of realizing this and non-attachment, right? And for someone who, myself, by the way, having been attached to previous relationships, not just romantic, but I would say certain friendships I had too, non-romantic, that was an attachment that creates suffering, right? And then in the end, it's going to break apart. So being an individual is realizing this, I think, to some extent, and then freeing oneself of that burden and that suffering and that craving, which, no, I have not gotten to that stage, by the way. I'm not there. And I don't know if I'll ever get there. But, a friend of mine used to say, keep polishing yourself. In Japanese, migaite, migaki ibai. So I use that metaphor too, like polishing, constant polishing. And this stuff comes out in my art. Some of my anger and frustration about things come out. And I think artists do this. Another artist I like, I didn't talk about, like 9 Inch Nails, right? Trent Reznor. I mean, when he was young, he's like throwing bottles of water, throwing stands, and acting kind of, you could say childish, but it was like, letting out that frustration through the music. That's okay, that's cool. And then you kind of get beyond that too. But there is this kind of hakidas, like spitting the poison out through art, which I think is a kind of healthy way to do it, or healthier than some other ways, like too much alcohol or drugs, or being a domestic abuser of your partner, this kind of thing, which to me is unforgivable, which, but it happens, right? A lot. So the realization that we're at core empty. We're empty. We're not our names. We're not our faces. We're not our bodies. We're not our likes and dislikes. We are a conglomeration of all those things, and that makes us individuals and gives us individuality. And if we can accept that, and if we can sort of get free of the illusion of how is it? It's like, right? We're all related. We're all connected, but yet we can be individuals, and we don't have to kind of follow the path that everyone else follows just because we want to be liked or loved or whatever. And if we can break free of this, and whether we create art or not, our lives will be the art. Our lives will be the art. Let's make our life the work of art, and let's polish it up to perfection. And I think maybe this is ultimately what I wanted to say tonight. So I don't know if anyone is stuck with this the entire way, but if you have, thank you very much, and it's been nice for me to have the opportunity. And in the background, as I said, I've played the full, actually, is coming to the end, compilation that I've just added to Bandcamp. Your actions follow you. marclowe.bandcamp.com. So please go there and have a listen if you're interested. It's free to stream and free to download, pay what you want. Thank you very much. Thank you. Marc Lowe. Take care.